Avianca. That Star Alliance carrier in Latin America that isn't Copa, and has the Life Miles program a lot of people use to book great award redemptions. I'd never actually flown them before, but recently flew their A320 and A319 in business class round trip. Honestly, it would have been completely and utterly forgettable, except for one thing. We were flying to the Galapagos. Is it supposed to make that noise? After saying farewell to the patrons of my hotel and the concierge, I arrived at Quito's Mariscal Sucre airport. Normally check-in at an airport is pretty straightforward, but given where I was going, there's a few extra steps. You first need to get in line for your Galapagos pass. Here, they'll relieve you of $20 and ask for your complete detailed itinerary. If you're with a cruise, this is very easy and you just provide the name of your cruise company. I filled out all of my information beforehand online, but the website was incredibly finicky, and I could only get the Spanish version to load. You next go through a biological screening where they scan your baggage and zip tie it shut. Ostensibly, it's to prevent contamination of the Galapagos ecosystem. In fact, the zip ties are because baggage agents were inserting cocaine into passengers' bags. The check-in line was quite long, but I was able to use the shorter one for business class. At check-in, I was told the flight was delayed 2.5 hours. I'd heard wonderful things about the Sala VIP lounge in the international terminal, and I found as much in the video linked above. But for this domestic flight, there's a domestic Sala VIP as well. Obviously, it's not as nice as its international terminal brother, and was quite crowded. But damn, it was also really nice.
Nice.
There were similar tasty sandwiches, as well as various food and alcohol offerings, though there's no dedicated bar. Power outlets were readily available as well. Finally, our delayed A320 landed and pulled in. It sported an older, more classic livery. However, in the background, you can see an even older paint job for Aerogal, which merged with Avianca and Taka in 2009. It was only renamed Avianca Ecuador in 2014. Avianca really isn't a single airline, but rather a group of 7 national airlines under their Colombian overlords. Avianca Ecuador only has 10 aircraft with 4 A319s and 6 A320s. Most of the flights from Quito to the Galapagos make a stop in Guayaquil, both because of additional passengers as well as fuel. Given Quito's altitude and the fact that planes do not seem to refuel in the Galapagos, carrying enough fuel to be able to fly from Quito and back is tricky. My flights, in fact, were the only direct ones I saw. I was given seat 1A for both of my flights. I'm normally not a bulkhead guy, as I like having all of my stuff within reach. Fortunately, Avianca really didn't care about personal items being left by your feet in the bulkhead row. Honestly, that sentiment is what sums up this flight review. Avianca Ecuador went through the motions of what they thought an airline should do. The seats were dated and a bit odd. On my outbound A320 there was USB power, though the remote was a bit old. There were buttons for a leg rest, and the magazine listed it as a feature. But I got down and looked. There is no leg rest. Not in my row, not in any other. On the A320s there's a personal TV screen, and they handed out headsets. But the map was very slow, and after they made a cabin announcement, the system was stuck and no one was able to use the in-flight entertainment, so I had no idea what was on offer. The A319 had no personal entertainment. We were offered sparkling wine, and were instructed that as the aircraft refueled, all electronic devices, including cell phones, needed to be turned off. Yeah, nobody followed those instructions. Finally, we taxied out and took off from Quito.
Is my vision of the future. Ta-da!
A house?
Come on, let me give you the tour.
I'm afraid to say that this flight had some of the absolutely worst of gringos on it. Putting your feet up right next to a sign asking you not to, cursing your buddy for blocking the window or when there was any turbulence, or loudly demanding more wine when the drink cart came by. Look, my fellow Americans.
My fellow Americans.
People judge you and our country when you travel. I'm always of the mindset that when traveling, one should always be on one's best behavior.
We can and should be best.
Yeah, sure, that. True, to be equal opportunist here, the Chinese tourists had their feet up on the way back. But to their credit, while it's incredibly tacky, I didn't see a sign on the flight explicitly prohibiting it. Other than the scenery on takeoff, we flew over the Pacific Ocean towards the Galapagos, and it was cloudy most of the way. The food, existed. On the flight out, I was served a ham and cheese sandwich. Look at that ratio of bread to meat. Since I'm clearly carb conscious, I took out all of the meat and cheese and double stuffed it on half of the bread. The wine that came with it really wasn't that great either. My return flight had a roast beef sandwich that was noticeably better, but again, not really worthwhile. As we began our descent, two interesting things happened. First, they sprayed the overhead bins with a disinfectant. Time for that Febreze footage again! Second, there was a pre-recorded conversation between a native Spanish speaker and a Mr. Jones, an ignorant American with a thick accent, that went over the park rules of the Galapagos. I'm just not sure who this was really for. It was in Spanish.
Disfrutarlo con un contacto mucho más natural.
Ay, me agrada como piensa. Qué gusto conocerlo, Mr. Jones.
So your caricaturely ignorant American tourist won't understand what's being said. Perhaps it was displayed on the overhead monitors back in coach with subtitles, but nothing was on our screens. So it turns out there actually is a video produced by the Ecuadorian government. But I don't believe anything was actually being shown, and the audio was in Spanish. For reference, here's that same section in English.
It's evident if one comes to this beautiful place on the planet, one has to prepare to enjoy it with a more natural contact.
I like how you think. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Jones.
We first sighted San Cristobal Island, and specifically Punta Pit, which I'd later go to. Finally, we overflew Baltra Island, past Itabaca Channel, and came into land. You just assume everyone enjoys watching planes land, but the locals really couldn't have cared less. After a brief taxi, we deplaned by stairs and walked across the desolate Baltra Island to the terminal. Is it supposed to be making that noise? We passed an Emetebe Britain-Norman BN2 Islander parked on the apron. Yes, that review is coming soon as well. On arrival in the Galapagos, you'll need to plunk down $100 in cash, in addition to the initial permit, then begin the long process of getting to Puerto Ayora, which I cover in my guide to Santa Cruz. For the return, I arrived early, and the check-in lady remarked that I had a long road ahead of me back to Chicago, nearly 20 hours of travel. There's another Sala VIP, but understandably, being on a desolate, uninhabited rock in the middle of the Pacific reduces your level of amenity. Despite what the machine said, there was no Coke Zero, nor was there any orange juice. But hey, what do you expect? The Wi-Fi was also so slow it was unusable, but again, that's par for the course in the Galapagos. The whole terminal is open air, and there's an outdoor part of the lounge, though this does allow one to photograph the Sala VIP finch in its natural habitat. Our inbound flight arrived, and the turnaround was quite quick with the lack of refueling. There was no zone boarding, and it was all just a free-for-all to get to the A319. The business class this time was less crowded. There were 2 non-revs, and even a random woman who was upgraded from economy because it was her birthday. So, kudos to Avianca on that. other than some turbulence on approach in Quito? The flight was uneventful. So having flown on 1/5 of Avianca Ecuador's fleet, what do I think? It's completely forgettable. I watched Sandspotter's video on Avianca, and I agree that the airline has very little soul or identity. But honestly, what do you expect when you take 7 different airlines and fuse them together? Does United have a distinct personality after the merger with Continental? What's the American Airlines vibe when they don't even have a mission statement? My albeit limited experience with Latin American airlines is that they get you from one place to another and go through the motions of being an airline, enough to get by. So yeah, they're fine. If I were paying cash for this flight in business class, I'd of course be disappointed. But is domestic business class in the United States really any better? In all honesty, no. So I can't be too harsh on Avianca, because it just is what it is. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more flight reviews. I'll see you on the next one.